And you can still hear me. Yep.
Yeah, I can still hear you. Hi, Jason.
Yeah,
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. We're just opening up the webinar room here and getting set up for our wellness talk tonight. I see that there's already about 45 of you that were waiting. So wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, we're a few minutes tardy this evening, but I've got Jason and Franco here as well. Hello, Franco.
Hey, Franco.
How are you doing, guys?
Really good. Thanks so much for being here. Yeah, we're just getting started. So
Perfect.
What I'm going to do here is just give a little intro, and then I'll hand it over to both of you. Franco, if you do have additional slides that you want me to share when you're talking, there is a screen share button at the top, or you can just say, Haley, you can share that slide, and I've got them loaded and ready to go here as well.
Okay, well, there were the three that I did forward to you guys, and then I realized that they weren't as wonderful and beautiful as yours. But at least we can get the message across.
Yeah.
Because, it's a scientific message that I'm going to try to make very easy to understand and convey. But if those slides help, if you can put them up when I'm ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let me know. So
thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this wellness talk about the healing power of curcumin. Tonight, Jason Watkin and Franco Cavallari will help you learn how you can get more of this powerhouse active ingredient into your life. My name is Haley, and I support our wellness events program with Nature's Fair Markets. So thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you to Justin and Brenda and all of the team at Purica who have partnered with us for this wellness talk. We did just bring this event into 3 of our locations last week, and there were some awesome conversations, some awesome questions, and we really encourage you, our online viewers, to ask questions and make sure that you are heard in this online environment as well. The presentation will be about 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. But before we start, I'll give you a little bit of a background on our presenters this evening. So Jason is the founder and formulator of Purica, and this role is driven by his passion for helping people recover their well-being through nutraceuticals. He brings extensive training and pathophysiology, pharmacology, and nutrition. And Franco is a PhD candidate from the Faculty of Medicine, Experiential Medicine program at the University of British Columbia. His deep interest in healing foods and inflammatory diseases has inspired a focus on the anti-inflammatory benefits of curcumin. Thank you both so much for being here with us tonight. We really look forward to learning from your expertise.
Thanks, Haley.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And I see there's a few on the chat, Haley. I don't know if there's about 5 people that are having trouble opening the webinar, but they may have seen it now. I'm not sure.
That might be just from the beginning, but I'll stop it and start it again so that we've got it live. Here we are. And that if someone's in the chat can just give us a thumbs up and say, yep, we can see you and we can hear you, then we'll make sure we're good to go and we'll get started.
So Frank, I'll start a little bit of the presentation, then turn it over to you in the middle, and then I can finish off at the end. That's good?
Yeah, that's great.
Great. And Karen says I can see it now, so we're good to go.
All right. Thank you, Karen. So I'll go forward with this, and then we're going to bring in Franco in the middle to actually talk about curcumin itself and the different fractions, which are really interesting. Normally, I cover quite a bit on stress. My background is first in medicine and science back in the 80s, 90s. Then I shifted into comparative religion and philosophy, and I studied and formally and still do with the Tibetans in the scholastic tradition, as well as the meditative yogic tradition. So everything we do at Purica is about mind and body and getting at the root. And I'll touch in this a sec, but that's why I really partner with Franco too, because he's looking for the root. By the way, we're both considered pretty geeky guys when it comes to science. So that's how we know each other from the past. I will get into that. So right away, I'll get into quickly. I would normally cover this more. The reason I cover this so intensely because it's my passion, but also I created these slides. Stress is the root of the inflammatory process and also is driving it. So if anything happens to you, a potential stressor or damage or anything, stress is really increasing that development and accelerating aging and different things over time. So if you look at this, we can give you copies of this, by the way. So I'm going to speed through these 2 because I don't have time tonight. But this is really important. It's the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic state. Sympathetic on the left-hand side is like a mind disturbed, and it would be fight flight, freeze, or fawn. Freeze is when you're totally uncertain. What's going on in the last 2 years with all this confusion sets you into a chronically confused type of stress state, which is kind of dangerous because then when there's an acute stressor, it can trigger you and you can actually freeze, get into a freeze state of denial, don't know what to do, and you feel completely overwhelmed. That's happening to a lot of people. The fawn state's super common. We're not usually fighting or running. We do get irritated. That's the fight response. We do get worried. That's the flight. But also the fight is impatience, judging yourself for others, distraction when you're tense. Anytime you feel tense. There's a Chinese saying that says, proverb, it says that tension is who we think we should be. Relaxation is who we truly are. So the idea is the tension state is the state that we're always in dealing with life. And some people are more intense than others. Some people have developed coping mechanisms, but they're still in that stress state. Anyways, what that state's doing is it's increasing the breakdown of your tissues and aging so that you can produce energy to fight or run, freeze or fawn, fake. And so what you want to do is get into this right-hand state, which is the parasympathetic mode. And instead of being fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which is all about tension, it's more about rest, digest, heal, calm, and clear. So it's I'll show you in the next slide. It's basically anti-inflammatory. So this is how it really ties into this. If you have chronic stress in your life and you're taking things to decrease inflammation, and you still stay stressed, it's like fighting an uphill battle. It may work and keep on working for a while, but then you just have to adjust the dose or take other things. So incorporating something that helps to mitigate stress, that's why we talk about medicinal mushrooms a lot, meditation, yoga, qigong, tai chi, walks in nature, kayaking because you're close to the water. It's really soothing. Or interesting technique, walking forward and scanning side to side, right? Side to side scanning seems to put your nervous system and relax it. It's the opposite of scrolling up and down. That is actually stressing and engaging your mind in a beta state. So you're in that state of stress just from scanning on your devices. So sometimes just look out and move a little bit and scan side to side. It helps to calm you down. That's an easy thing to do. And it's sometimes hard to find techniques. Anyways, you can see the whole idea of when you're in the stress state is breaking your body down, creating inflammation, and aging you, but also giving you pain and flexibility, spasm, whatever, which is how it ties with talking about curcumin. And the right-hand state is that blue sky mind. On the left-hand side, the Tibetans say it's like your head's always in the clouds, caught up in the clouds of thought, emotion, stances, and it's really bad right now, obviously. Stress is a huge thing, like I said. Whereas the other side, learning that the sky is always there, your mind is completely open, like blue sky mind. It's just about experiencing that once in a while, like glimpses of the blue sky, and then you know it's there, you feel confident, then it's easier to find techniques that work for you to get you in that state. And the why you want that state, again, like I said, no matter what you're taking, you need to be in that rest, digest, and heal mode where you're able to absorb and assimilate nutrients and whatever, even what we're talking about, the curcumin, more readily. And your body's about building and rebuilding and repairing, and you feel calm and clear. So the next, anyways, I'd love to talk more about that. Before I get into talking or pass it over to Franco, I came up with a thing on the immune system because I was in immunology and studying infectious disease. I was in clinic for quite a few hundred hours. It was mostly with patients that were suffering with immune dysfunction. So I have a fair amount of experience in this, but at the same time, it's difficult because there's so many facets to the immune system. Anyone that says they understand the whole immune system is not telling you the truth. Something's happening new all the time. But there's two main fractions I don't know if you can see my cursor, but in the middle, you have innate immunity. On the right, you have adaptive. Adaptive becomes acquired when it's memory. The adaptive part of the immune system is what most people in common terms think of as your immune system. So your production of antibodies, your B and T cells, right? In the innate immunity, that's what you're born with. It's broad spectrum, basically goes after everything. It's fast acting, and there's multiple mechanisms in it, including fever and different things, or little cells like Pac-Man, the white cells. What I did in this one, though, is I broke the barrier part of the immunity into its own column. which is actually part of your innate immunity. So what does this mean? And why am I talking about this? Well, when you're stressed, it is a very powerful inhibitor of your immune system. And in science, when they're thinking about that, it's because they think, well, the immune system, digestion, things like that are not important when you're fighting or running. You need to steal energy from those systems to protect yourself at the time. So you leave yourself vulnerable whenever you're stressed. Same as taking corticosteroids, right? The drugs used for inflammation, they are inhibiting your immune function. They're degrading tissues and making you age faster when you use them chronically. Same as if you had Cushing's syndrome, that hypersecretion of cortisol. So in this case, the barrier immunity, back in the 80s when I was microbiology, he said the most important part of your immune system is to keep things out in the first place. And so the barrier is, think of yourself as a castle. This analogy might work with Franco later. I don't know if he used this one as well.
I remember that one.
Right? So if you're the castle, and the moat around your castle are your mucosal membranes. So that would be from your mouth to your rectum, a tube that runs through, there's a mucosal moat inside there. Inside that tube is technically not part of you until it enters through the moat into your bloodstream. It's like a hose, a garden hose. If you take the water out, inside the hose is air. It's continuous with the outside. Same as here. Same as in your lungs, your respiratory tract, your nasal tract, your genitourinary tract. That's how you can get bladder infections, all these different things, because technically all those organisms are living in the outside environment, but they're inside holes in your body or sacs or tubes. So this mucosal moat is keeping things out. And the surface area in here, in your digestive tract, if you flatten it out, could be the size of a tennis court. It's huge. So the idea is you got a lot of surface area. You need to keep things out. Then you don't have to get your immune system active against it. But here's some interesting things they have learned lately. So you think of the mucosal membrane as your moat. Think of all your digestive enzymes, your hydrochloric acid, all the microbiome, all the microbes that live in your tract as like alligators and crocodiles and different things in your moat. They're protecting you against the outside environment. So stress is inhibiting the production of the moat. So when it's broken down, it's not repairing. So it's drying up your moat, letting things in that shouldn't get in, including large food particles. But healthy functioning, say, you got the moat, mucosal membrane, you've got the digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, microbiome, that are all acting like alligators and crocodiles, right? And the microbiome, they found out that some of the microbes in your tract carry memory in their genetic makeup of when they've been exposed to a pathogen in previous hosts, which could have been forever long ago within their genetic line. They'll actually produce compounds to break down that organism or to stimulate the immune system of the host to go after that organism. So they have memory. They didn't know that. So they're a really integral part of your immune system. They also help to coordinate your immune system, and your immune system helps to coordinate it through different compounds that they each release, like a farming process. So keeping things out is ideal, your skin, your mucosal membranes. If they get through, that's taking time. If they get through, then you have all these different cells in the innate immunity. One of my favorites is the natural killer cell, NK cell, which again was a broad spectrum one. They didn't realize that it actually carries memory. It kind of reminds you of that Road Warrior show where they wore the kills on the outside of their body in Mad Max or whatever. Well, that's what they do, and they help present to the next immune system, part of the immune system, adaptive, so that things can act quicker. So the adaptive, think of this, is it's like a tower in the middle of the castle, and there's strategists high up in the tower watching the invaders get through. All the tactics and things they use, what is their overall strategy? It's watching their weaknesses, their strengths, and formulating strategies against multiple different tactics that the enemies are using so that next time it remembers and it can quickly stop the invasion, right? But that all takes time. That's natural immunity. So the first part of your immune system, the strongest part, is your barrier and the innate, and it's slowing things down, if not taking care of it altogether, but it's also allowing for long-term memory the strategists in the tower are overlooking. If things breach your blood and get in there really fast and don't give it time, then your adaptive immunity overall forms a memory that's not that strong, only to certain tactics, and it misses others. That's the kind of difference between why natural immunity is so strong. Here's the products on the bottom that we're utilizing to improve the moat, which is our oldest product, Recovery. The Recovery 3.0 we'll talk about today. It's more focused on inflammation, and it carries with it the curcumin from Franco, which he'll talk about. The Immune 7 and Complete 360 are with stress and the immune system overall, and they're really powerful products. Complete 360 is my favorite for that. So what I wanted to open up to now is we have had Recovery Extra Strength for 20-something years. It's been in formulation for, I think, 9 years in development. Franco understands this, how long it takes to develop something. And I was working with ballet dancers in Europe, and we behind the scenes. It was serious autoimmune conditions, anterior cruciate ligament tear, median cruciate tear, and the results were phenomenal. But a lot of it had to do with healing up the intestinal tract because they were hyper-absorbing things they shouldn't. That was the recovery. So everything about recovery was results-based, really powerfully results-based that could integrate with drugs. So what we wanted to do is the whole time is if we ever found something that you'd take less capsules, so it's easy for someone who's not used to taking anything, came from mainstream, wants something that works fast, as powerful, and can integrate with drugs, we said we would do it, but nothing came along. Then Franco one day, we were talking, and he says, got this new curcumin, and everybody, as soon as someone says new curcumin, you think, oh no. But I understand Franco's really tech savvy like me with science and everything. So I'm listening and thinking, okay, what do you got here? He said, this is like apples to oranges. It'll change your whole view of what curcumin really is and what it can do with slight modifications in how you concentrate, things like that. So it took about, like Franco's memory is better, but he said it took me about 2 years to kind of finally capitulate. It's okay, let's try this then. And proofs in the pudding kind of idea, because that's what we're all about. Go after the root of the problem, not just symptoms. And we don't, as a company, we still do everything. We manufacture our own products. We research and develop our own products. We go through the whole process. We market them. We distribute them. Everything. There's almost no companies left in the entire natural industry that do that. So we're part of all the stages. So that's why I feel like you can get really excited about something when something truly revolutionary comes around, that you can take that in and be a pioneer because you're used to doing all that. And that's what I feel has happened with what Franco has introduced to us. And with that, we were able to integrate that on its own as a product, which is very hard in a market full of curcumin to bring a new curcumin. Nobody wanted, even our people, our reps in our company didn't want to do it. We did it, and it's just a game changer. We're so happy we did. But we also integrated it into a product, the Recovery 3.0, which is just 2 to 4 caps a day. So it's much less to take than the Recovery, which is powder or caps. You can go up higher. Anyways, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Franco to talk about why is this curcumin so special, and maybe what is even curcumin to everybody so they understand.
Yes. So, if I could get the one of those slides put up, then I can while I talk, then I can point to some of the features. But everybody knows about curcumin in the health space, in the natural health space, and curcumin is it's a misunderstood category. I personally stumbled onto the value of curcumin while I was a competitor in the bodybuilding arena, looking for something that helped to reduce inflammation from the physical training. And so I could work out harder, more frequently than my competitors would. And, at the time I was using mega doses, but the mega doses in terms of the 2 to 3 grams of regular curcumin I was using is not something the average person's going to do. I was putting that into a shake and everything turned orange, but it worked at the high doses the way I wanted it to work. Now, curcumin, as you know, is extracted from turmeric. Now, turmeric, the actual root itself, is only made up of approximately 3 to 6% curcumin. So there are other things in the turmeric plant like turmerones and other actives, but curcumin appears to be one of the anti-inflammatory agents within the turmeric plant that is most studied for its anti-inflammatory activity. And we've seen it in the marketplace anywhere from a 70% curcumin extract to a 97% curcumin extract. While competing in the 1990-92, developed a disease called ulcerative colitis, and it's a genetic disease that results in an autoimmune attack on the large intestine. And I didn't know it at the time, but the mega doses of curcumin I was using was actually taking the edge off of the disease and allowing me to cope. And in fact, cope to the point where when I stopped taking it, I was hospitalized and realized that it was helping me stay out of the hospital. I went back on it after being hospitalized for 2 weeks and told at the time that I was supposed to have my large intestine removed in order to survive the episode, that the curcumin did take the edge off of, that my life would change. I said, I'm going back to using what I was using. And I actually as I was competing, I won Miss North America in Los Angeles a year after that episode. So it kind of sparked something in my entire research program. I was at University of British Columbia at the time doing my undergrad in human nutrition and utilizing all the knowledge that I was acquiring as an athlete to excel as an athlete. But I suddenly became very interested in curcumin and began to study the anti-inflammatory activity and the constituents within the curcumin. What most people didn't know at the time is that curcumin, a 95% curcumin that you might buy in the store, is not necessarily the same product every time you buy it. And the reason is curcumin 95% is made up of 3 curcuminoids within that 95% extract. So think about this. We take turmeric, which is 3 to 6% curcumin. We pull out curcumin at a 95% concentration so that we can concentrate this anti-inflammatory activity. But then every time we extract it, these curcuminoids, 3 of them, the proportions change. And everybody would say, it doesn't matter if they change. And if you look at the slide, you know, the proportions of curcumin 1, which is called diferylylmethane in the technical term, typically exist between a 55 to 75% concentration. And everybody would think it doesn't matter if they fluctuate in proportion because each of these curcuminoids have such a similar homology, similar molecular structure that they're all going to deliver the same activity. Well, when I developed this ulcerative colitis, I found that the curcumin I was using, I would get the certificates of analysis for the raw material because I began to sell this product in one of my companies. And I realized that the one that had curcumin 3 in higher concentrations, this is bis-dimethoxycurcumin, BDMC, seemed to work a little better for me than the other curcumin extracts that had lower curcumin 3 levels in them. Now, you have to keep in mind, the average curcumin extract only has between 0.5% and 2.5 or 3% concentration of this curcumin 3, bis-dimethoxycurcumin. And we use the acronym BDMC to represent the nomenclature. So with 1 to 2 to 3%, there's not enough of that in that 95% concentration to deliver a result from that molecule. But everybody said, it doesn't matter. It's the same as the others. When I found and was certain that the ones that had a slightly higher concentration was delivering a result that was functional for me, I decided to separate the curcuminoids, curcumin 1, 2, and 3, and then take them in isolation to determine how they would work. Eventually, I found the proportion that worked for me with a higher curcumin 3. In fact, if you took pure curcumin 3, it wouldn't work very well because you needed the others to impact various features of this inflammatory pathway that I began to study. I literally went back to medical school and made that the subject of my studies in experimental medicine. And that became the focus for me for 10 years to map the pharmacology of curcumin 1, 2, and 3 and demonstrate irrefutably that they had a different pharmacology that contributed to a polypharmacology that made the anti-inflammatory activity way more powerful than any one on its own. But if one was missing and the concentration of curcumin 3 was too low, it wouldn't deliver the result I was experiencing. Now, going back to what I was doing with the mega dose, I would take the 2 to 3 grams a day. So curcumin 3 levels, by chance and by accident, without me knowing, came up high enough so that I would get a result that would contribute to nullifying or at least allowing me to cope with this disease, because curcumin 3 levels, because of the dose, were high enough to deliver a result. If I brought it back down to a 1,000 milligram dose, it wouldn't work because curcumin 3 levels in that curcumin extract was not high enough in its natural and the state that we typically take curcumin in. So eventually, over 4 years, the research I was doing led to discoveries. We published the papers in peer-reviewed medicine. We began to do requisitions for clinical studies with Health Canada. Health Canada actually approved our clinical trial for COVID treatment and a respiratory disease treatment using this technology, because the pharmacology overlapped on the cytokine storm phenomenon that you've heard about with COVID. It's phenomenal as a treatment for such diseases that have cytokine elevation. Now, why is it different? What I discovered was that curcumin 3 inhibits a protein, and we don't have to go to consumers and sell it to consumers on this basis, just to know that it inhibits a protein called MSK1. And this MSK1 is very different from the proteins that the rest of the curcuminoids inhibit. But when you inhibit that, together with the other ones, the anti-inflammatory activity is profound. And not only is it more potent, that can even help people that have disorders that may be related to immune or autoimmune or autoinflammatory activity. It works in lower doses because obviously now you don't need that mega dose to get that higher curcumin 3 level in there. And so therefore I was able to take this and put it into a functional dose that people could use that wasn't prohibitive and worked for me to mitigate the activity of ulcerative colitis. I have to tell you, my diagnosis was severe ulcerative colitis, where I was hospitalized 2 times, and I came off it the second time in 2009, and I was hospitalized in St. Paul's Hospital again. And that's when I said in 2009, that's it. We're going to do the trials to demonstrate the pharmacology and produce a product that everybody can use in a functional way and that was not prohibitive. So if we can go to present my second slide, what we began to show was that, if we took the proportions, so if you can see on the left-hand side, these are the proportions of standard curcumin, 0.2 to 2%. And then when we extract it in the way we're extracting it to isolate this curcumin 3, you can see we get to 30%. And at 30%, it's around 27% when you start to see a result that's functional. So this is not the same as any curcumin you're going to buy in the marketplace. What we have done is said to Health Canada, we went in and got a new standard and a new monograph for this. It took 2 years to get the monograph and approve safety, approve functionality on the claims. And the beautiful thing about it is that we demonstrated that each of those curcuminoids are similar in their activity, but each of them also have differential activity that when they are all present in a functional level, like we have in this 30% BDMC 30, the result of the anti-inflammatory activities is experienced within a couple of hours, not a couple of days. And we began to see this when Jason and Purica launched this, because the retailers themselves began to choose that based on what the consumers were saying when they went out and bought another curcumin product if it wasn't clearly available for them. And they said, well, hold on a sec, this other one's not working anymore. Well, it wasn't that it's not working. It's because this one has such an intense activity that the result is more profound than regular curcumin. And we went out and we patented this technology and said, okay, we need to find a partner that's going to be able to deliver this to the market that's already out there. I could have built my own brand over time. And I said, no, that's going to take time. I want someone like Purica that's already out there doing a good job, that has the consumers in mind as their foremost business directive. And we know that once they launch it, they're going to see a result that's very different than anything. The retailers themselves began to propagate the product simply based on what the consumers were saying. And the science was there to demonstrate the pharmacology as to why. The reason why I went back to University of British Columbia experimental medicine was this in itself. And everybody said, you're 40 years old. Are you crazy? You don't need to go back to do your PhD. And I said, no, I do. Because if I don't do this, nobody else is going to go to the extent that I'm willing to go to demonstrate what I've experienced personally. And if nobody does it, I can't go out and say, hey, it works for me. Why doesn't everybody else take it? I have to actually do the studies that can be published and then take it to the next level with clinical trials so that we can make the claims. So Health Canada did approve these claims as anti-inflammatory. We are now working at a medicinal level to develop the clinical trials. We actually have developed the clinical trials. They're already approved by Health Canada to go to the level where we can make indication-specific claims for this technology. And we have now everybody around the world looking at this as a technology that has changed the way things are done with curcumin. In fact, we are now doing cancer research with an Indian government university where they have a mysterious elevation and escalation of mucosal cancer. And we have found that this technology and another one we're working on is working very well to treat the cells. In fact, today, we just calculated the significance and p-values for our research over the last year and a half. And it works on breast cancer, works on other things that we're studying. And we can't make those claims publicly. This is just for our discussion today. But we are going to set up the clinical trials that will allow us to go that route. But just to tell you how potent these technologies are when they're studied in a format that allows us to engineer what we're trying to accomplish. And what we do with this, originally we were actually just elevating the curcumin 3 level because we knew we had to achieve that. Now we are extracting it with an extraction process that's very proprietary, very unique, in a natural way, and escalating the curcumin 3 in every batch. Now, the problem is that when you do this naturally, these fluctuate. But what we've done is lock them in a process where we can standardize it, not just by the 95% curcumin whole, but by that 30% BDMC level that gives you this result. I think I had one more slide that I was referring to. But I have to tell you that when we did this research, the professors that were in the thesis program originally said, well, you know, we're not sure we're going to find anything. And I said, I'm sure I'm going to find something because it's there. We just need to spend the time and effort. And once we did, you know, we just need to partner up with a company that would be able to deliver it to market in a way that kept the consumers in check and made the consumers first. Because I was worried about the technology being effective and manufacturers or brands just putting sprinkles in there and expecting to market the technology's trademark. And so we wanted to make sure that, you know, we had ethics and morals in place, and Purica became the first choice. That's why I pursued Jason for a while. And I said, Jason, listen, if you don't try this and see how it works for yourself, I'm going to have to eventually find another brand because I need to get it out to consumers. I can't be the only one benefiting from this. So they did, and they loved it. And here we are also with the technology in recovery, and a canine product that is seemingly doing well as well.
Just sorry to interrupt, Franco. I only had the two.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. But the one thing to keep in mind is when I presented this, I presented these technologies in Asia, Indonesia, Vietnam, because I was asked to go there to discuss the research. I had medical doctors telling me, you can't do this. You cannot change the proportions of curcumin because this is a holistic herb that has different proportions in this 95% that are there for a reason. And it was an amazing experience for me as a Westerner going into these Asian countries and then saying to these people, and I had an interpreter, I said, I want you to think about it this way. Everybody in this office, there was 3,000 people at the one seminar. You professionals have been using curcumin to treat people for thousands of years. Which God told you today to stop extracting curcumin from turmeric, because turmeric is the whole plant, not curcumin, and leaving it at that? Because nature provided you with 3 curcuminoids in there that you can extract at any time to change what you call this holistic effect, but to change it based on real science. So I positioned myself on an island for such a long time. Holistic philosophies here, pharmaceutical here. Everybody hated me until I merged them together using the pharmaceutical strategies to prove that this approach, by moving these curcuminoids around, produce a product that's much better to treat people with diseases that are more difficult to treat. You know, osteoarthritis is easy to treat with regular curcumin, but diseases of systemic and inflammatory activity like autoimmune and auto-inflammatory conditions and stress-induced inflammation as well becomes systemic, cannot be treated unless you have a pointed anti-inflammatory activity that hits a protein like MSK1 at a nuclear level, at the genetic level. So it's actually taking these proteins that your genes are producing in a way when the gene is mutated or misfiring and actually neutralizing and correcting that misfiring. It's not actually turning it off. It literally is correcting it at an epigenetic level. These are epigenetics. And have you heard of the term epigenetic and epigenic activity? It's actually correcting epigenic activity that has gone awry and created mutations. So we can't say that it's correcting disease, but at the very least, it's allowing you to cope with serious inflammatory conditions at a level of the proteome, the cells, proteins produced directly from the genome. And now we've begun to do this with other herbs in the marketplace that have multiple constituents to lock them down based on these specific activities. And then we hope to work with Purica on those in the future. But for now, we know we have a very powerful technology in the curcumin bio-BDMC, and Purica is the purveyor of that.
Thank you, Franco. Do you want me to finish off with a couple words?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Franco. I was thinking about the takeoff too, that you basically like a marriage. You proposed to me a whole bunch of times, and I finally said yes.
Yeah.
But no, seriously though, he had to give me a lot of input. I don't sell that easily, and it was impressive. But also trying it yourself, because for us, we can talk to her blue in the face. The proof's in the pudding, 100%. And I used to get migraine headaches. I hadn't had any of those for a long time. I couldn't sleep when I was young at all. So insomnia, severe migraine headaches. But my back was my issue because I went over a cliff and I was in hockey and I didn't realize the goalie had been taken out. And so I flipped over my goalie. I was defense and the spike was still in the net upside down. I got impaled on the spike on the same area that I had scar tissue when I was 10. So I've had some serious back stuff and that kind of thing. So for me, it was a no-brainer right away. When I did work related, I tested it out, boom. But what I did notice is that day I was working in the sun a lot. And anybody who has back issues knows what I'm talking about. You just want to get this job done. Oh, I can't leave that tomorrow. I've only got like another half an hour and I'll get it done. But that's at the point when your back is super tired, your muscles are tired. You're going to get injured typically at that time, even by bending over slightly. So I did that. I had a tweak in my back really strong. And I'd been working in the sun. And so I was having quite a headache. I'd been there about 4 hours. So I took it. And for me, when Franco says an hour or two, I mapped it. It was 45 minutes when I started to feel significant improvement. The headache was gone. And my back, I could tell it wasn't going to go into full spasm. When your mind starts thinking, oh my God, I just hurt my back. And then you're psychologically spasm around. I think it gets worse. I didn't have that response because it didn't get that bad. Next day, totally fine. Sometimes I could be knocked out for days having to be careful. Anybody, again, who has chronic pain and you injure that area, it can go for a long time. So this curcumin proved itself not only to be fast, but I've tried curcumin lots before in the past, just like Franco, for decades. It's a famous herb in Chinese medicine, in Tibetan medicine, in Ayurvedic medicine, in shamanic medicine, to treat pain, but also to treat gut disorders. Unlike non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like aspirin, ibuprofen, naproxen, Tolmatan, they may treat inflammation, but they do it by suppression, and they suppress the functionality and the repropagation of the mucosal moat. So they're actually damaging your moat and causing problems in the GI tract, whereas curcumin does not do that. So another big benefit as to why we went on with this. And when Franco's talking about that MSK1, the mitogen stress-induced kinase, that kind of like a commander-in-chief inside the cell. If you think of the cell as the castle, and then it's talking to other things like NF-kappa B and other different mediators inside the cell, like they would act like generals, right? And it says we need to induce an inflammatory response. Get the Navy, get the Air Force, get the Marines, get the Special Ops. That's outside the cell is all of the different functions like the cytokines, all the different, basically the army, the guys on the ground that are out in your bloodstream. They're running around there usually all the time. They need to be activated by this process inside your little castle. And so basically what Franco's saying is that the curcumin 3 fraction is actually addressing right away that first guy, the commander-in-chief, MSK1, basically saying, don't worry about this. We got it. And so you don't have that abnormal or that aberrant immune response that could be chronic or acute in intensity, because it's actually going right at the root. And it's not stopping natural, healthy inflammation that walls things off so you can get through your body. It's stopping that disease process inflammation that is basically something that is overwhelming your system. And that's where that cytokine storm and everything comes from, where the Army and the Navy, the Air Force, Marines have been kicked into high gear when they shouldn't have been, and they're all running around all confused. That's kind of like what's happening. So again, the 3 fraction is addressing the root, whereas other fractions aren't really doing that, including other drugs and herbs are not doing that. So this is something why Franco impressed me. I was trying to figure out how to talk about it more simply like this because it can be kind of overwhelming. The inflammatory process is very complex. That's why some anti-inflammatories work for some for others. This one is broad spectrum activity. It's like apples to oranges. You're only taking a couple caps versus towards, maybe even teaspoons full. So it's a game changer. So that's why we did it. And this is the product that we integrated in. Is the again, these slides are all available. Well, I guess it's not maybe there, but they're 3.0. And so we integrate it with different compounds to address stress at the root, the damaging response of stress, the breakdown, the catabolism, breaking your body down to fight or run kind of idea, and then the inflammatory response that is basically underlying all these different conditions. All those things come together: stress, breakdown, inflammation, with all these conditions associated with pain, spasm, lack of flexibility, aging. So this product is meant to deal with all of them. The only way we were able to do this product at only 2 to 4 caps a day was by integrating the Curcumin 3, 30% from Franco. So anyways, very thankful to Franco for breaking that out, because it's rare to have something so different come into the market from something so ancient, like he said, merging science and ancient traditions, but showing full respect to the traditions, where you're not just extracting out one compound and leaving everything else. That's more like a drug-like paradigm. This is that holistic paradigm, but also utilizing science to make it much more highly absorbable, assimilated, and concentrated where it's going to actually work. But the big one is, like Franco was talking about, it's compliance. If you're not going to take the dose necessary, then it's not going to work. If you can get the dose down to a manageable level where everybody's going to take it, that's a huge win for what's happening. And that's what Franco's done here. That's why we integrate it. And the results with the 3.0 for stress relief, for pain, inflammation, for breakdown, for age-related things is really impressive. It's one of our base products that we put with our Complete 360, our mushroom product, that provides an overall base for anti-inflammatory, anti-catabolic, anti-age-defying kind of idea. You can integrate it with all different drugs. We've had no issues with drug interactions. I studied pharmacology, so I was always cognizant of that idea. And mixed with the mushrooms, huge stress relief and immune function and support. You've got kind of a base right there. So anyways, normally this presentation is done a little bit different, and we focus more on the stress so you can understand more of the mechanisms. But just to know that the root, this product, because of the curcumin, is able to deal with one of the root aspects of the whole inflammatory process. So then the results are profound. The dose is really low. And again, you can integrate these things with drugs. So I think that's where I'd like to leave off. And if there's any questions coming in, because I know I don't have a lot of time, I can go from there.
Thank you both. It's been interesting to hear from Franco tonight after watching Jason's presentation last week, because it really does connect the science with the kind of mind-body connection, all of the things that you touch on with the stress. There's been a few questions in the question box already, so I'll start with a few of those, and while we're answering them, if anyone else has questions for Franco or Jason, just go ahead and type away. The first one is, where do you source your turmeric or curcumin, and do you test for lead?
Yes, so our base material comes out of India, and we do test for lead. We test for all the heavy metals, and we test obviously for each of the identifying curcuminoids, and then the micros.
And then add to that, and then Franco supplies us at Purica, and then we have to go through all those processes again. So we're testing for pages of different pesticide residues, solvent residues, heavy metals, microbes. Everything is duplicated at different labs. So you're getting redundancy that's assuring you that really high quality products.
Yes.
That's awesome. Another question around why can't we just eat the turmeric plant?
You can, but in order to get the pharmacological activity that we're talking about here, you'd have to eat a lot of that plant. For example, turmeric, as I said earlier, contains about 3 to 6% curcumin in it. And to get a functional dose, you'd have to have, half a pound of that. And then when you take out that 95% curcumin, it only has 1% concentration of curcumin 3, the bismumethoxycurcumin. So if you had that, you need about 3 grams of that curcumin after you've extracted it from about 400, almost 700 grams of the turmeric plant.
Yeah, it's a lot.
There's a question about the ORAC value. So put up the ORAC value. And that's for 300 milligrams, right, Franco? So per gram, the ORAC value on the BDMC versus just regular 95%, which is 9,500, which is already great because blueberries are about 2,500 per half cup, right? And they're already thought of as a great antioxidant.
Yes.
The ORAC, or the ability to scavenge free radicals of 95%, say, is 9,500, which is great, almost 4 times higher than blueberries. Yeah. But when Frank was talking about the ORAC value of the 3 fraction, the 30% fraction that we're using at 300 milligrams, not a gram, is 565,000. Yeah.
It was unfathomable.
Which then you which up to 1.6 something million, 1.7 million per gram. Yeah.
Well, when we discovered that was an accident, and we thought our machinery was broken. We actually had it recalibrated. It came back and did it again. So we said, okay, wait a minute, let's send it out. We sent it out to Brunswick labs and had them do it again, and it came back and was like, okay, machine wasn't broken, it's working, and that's what it was.
Wow.
Yep.
There's a couple of good questions around if they've seen on other curcumin products, they haven't taken Purica before. It has mentioned that you should only take for a maximum time period of, like, for example, 12 weeks. Is there a maximum period that you could take the product? And if you have, say, acute inflammation, what would be the recommended dosage for Recovery 3.0?
Well, I don't go off it, because if I do for 30 days, then I start to feel symptoms of my disorder. So I've been on it now for about 22 years, the way it is, and at quite high doses. What we recommend, based on what Health Canada has set for us as a recommendation on the technology, I always say, if you have a condition that's significant, take 2 to 3 capsules for the first 3 or 4 days. And after that, 1 or 2, because you want to saturate the body, give it a good hit for anti-inflammatory activity. And so what I do for my own condition, I take about 5 or 6 for 2 or 3 days, and then go down to 3 or 4 every day. And I do that 5 or 6 every month. So every month I'll take 5 or 6 for about 2 or 3 days, and then I go back down to my 2 or 3. The average person without an autoimmune condition, because you don't need that level, may only need to do 2 or 3 for 3 or 4 days, and then 1 or 2 for the rest of the month. That's the way I suggest taking it.
Great. A couple more questions here. Any potential negative side effects, or anyone who should not be taking curcumin?
Curcumin, if taken in high doses, is said to increase bleeding time. So some people that may have taken blood thinners or require blood thinners on a daily basis have to be careful. I have to tell you, with respect, being respectful to the regulatory system and Health Canada's recommendations, I always say yes. Stick to being cautious, ask your doctor. You have to, now, from a scientific standpoint, that's real for the most people, you have to take a lot of curcumin to increase bleeding time. Like, I'm talking 2 to 3 grams the way I was taking it before. But, just be cautious and be cognizant if you're taking blood thinners. The other thing is that people who have large bladder stones, gallbladder stones, may feel some pain if they're taking high doses of curcumin. And that pain is caused because curcumin can cause the gallbladder to constrict and push out its contents, the bile. And if you have stones that are too large to be passed in the duct, it can cause some pain as they get stuck. However, if you're taking curcumin each day, you're passing those stones, if they're being developed, before they get large, and it's a great preventive program. It's just that if you've taken it for the first time in a long time and there are some large stones in there, they'll get stuck in your duct. And I tell you, I've had a call probably once every 4 months. My stomach hurts every time I take it. You have a gallbladder stone. No, I don't. Go see your doctor. You have a gallbladder stone. Every time you take it, you get paid. Yeah. They come back, call me about a month later after an ultrasound. I have gallbladder stones and I have a large one. Yep. Wow. It's pretty reliable. Yeah.
I think there might be one or two more questions, and then we've covered all that's in there yet. How do you extract the curcumin?
Well, there's different ways to extract it. Some organic chemicals can be used, like hexanes. We stay away from that. We use ethanol, which is the alcohol that people drink. And ethanol can be very easily removed in the process at the end. That, there is no residual ethanol, but at least we know, in case there is, it's not going to be carcinogenic like a hexane would be,
Okay.
or benzene and other chemicals that can be used. It's a far more expensive process because the yield of the curcumin when using ethanol is much lower. So it's not cost effective, but it's the safest way to do it.
We should talk about that because a lot of the different extraction methods traditionally used around the world they leave residues, and that's why they have so many pages of residue levels from many different solvent extraction methods that you have to actually do research for to make sure that your product is safe when you receive it, and then also when you manufacture with it, you have to test it again. So sometimes they're going through to test for all these different levels of extraction of residual of the solvent, or sometimes it's three different you're getting it tested 3 times. I mean, a brain thing. You're getting it tested 3 times for redundancies for the exact same procedure to make sure that nothing has contaminated all the way through the manufacturing process.
Awesome. One final question, and then we'll wrap it up tonight. How soon would you expect to see results or a difference when taking the product?
Well, most people feel results within a couple hours. And I find this really funny because there are a lot of people who take it, and then after a couple of months, they say, well, I don't think this is doing anything for me. And they stop, and that's when they go, oh my gosh, in 2 or 3 days, like, wow, I'm stiff. This has been working for me. And, for me, actually, because I was a, international bodybuilder, I was this massive guy in the magazines. I used to squat 700 pounds, bench press 500. My joints don't hurt, but if I stop taking it, they hurt like hell because I beat the heck out of myself when I was younger. And I'm 55 now, and I feel the pain. In fact, after this, I'm going to go have a quick workout. And if I've been off it for 3 or 4 days, I limp through the workout because I'm sore.
Wow.
Impressive. Franco with curcumin and myself with recovery. They tell you to not take things forever, but we've been both doing it daily for 20 years. And the funny thing about curcumin too is that you have places obviously in different countries where they eat it every single day, their entire life, high amounts of turmeric, which is going to give you a pretty decent dose of the curcumin. Yeah. And they're taking all the same Western drugs and that too mixed in. So some of these recommendations by the regulars, like Franco was saying, they're really conservative, and it would never happen unless you were super rich and decide you're going to take bottles of it at one serving, which obviously is not typically going to happen.
Let's face it, the aging process itself is propagated by oxidation at a fundamental level, oxidation and inflammation. As you age, the inflammatory process becomes dysregulated. Absolutely. And as inflammation escalates, so does oxidation, and they propagate each other in a cyclical fashion. Yet here you have a compound that has the highest ORAC value and the highest anti-inflammatory activity. As far as I'm concerned, it's almost like a biological preservation system for a biological system. And I'm telling you, like I feel like I'm 25, I'm 55, and if I stop taking it, I'm feeling like I'm 65. That's when I move. I don't move as quickly.
Yep, absolutely. I feel like 5 or 15. I'm 50 plus too. Same stuff. all the matter of the mind state.
For sure.
Well, thank you so much both for all your knowledge tonight and throughout last week in the stores, Jason. We appreciate it, and we've learned a lot. We will have a recording saved to our YouTube channel. So folks, if you missed the beginning or want to share it with other people, you're more than welcome to do that. We'll email all the attendees the link tomorrow. And our next event series is in November with Harmonic Arts on stress. And herbs for your mind and your mood. So we're going to continue on trying to support you through what can kind of be a stressful and moody season in the winter.
Well, thanks for having me, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Haley.
Good night.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.